My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm 42 years old, a certified public accountant working in San Diego, California. I've spent my entire career building a reputation for being methodical, organized, and reliable. Numbers don't lie, patterns don't hide, and details always matter. That's how I approach everything in my life, including relationships. I was married to Olivia for 11 years. She's 39, a university professor with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue when she wanted to be. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I believed we had something solid, something worth fighting for. In early 2024, things started to shift. Small arguments became bigger ones. Silence replaced conversation. I'd come home from work and find her distracted, distant, scrolling through her phone with a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. When I suggested we work on things, she immediately agreed. But she had a condition. "I think we need professional help," she said one evening over dinner. "I found this therapist, Dr. Colin Harris. He's highly regarded, specializes in marriage counseling. I already looked into his rates and availability." I agreed without hesitation. I've always believed in communication, in fixing problems rather than running from them. If therapy could help us reconnect, I was all in. Dr. Harris had an office in a nice part of downtown San Diego, the kind of building with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. He was 46, well-dressed, articulate, with the kind of confidence that comes from years of telling people what's wrong with their lives. His rate was $200 per session, standard for therapists with his credentials in San Diego. Our first few sessions seemed productive. He asked thoughtful questions, made us talk through our issues, gave us homework assignments to improve communication. Then things changed. "I think it would be beneficial if Olivia and I had some individual sessions," Dr. Harris suggested during our fourth visit in late February. "Sometimes partners need space to explore their feelings separately before we can make real progress together." I didn't think much of it at first. Individual sessions made sense. But those sessions became more frequent, twice a week, then 3 times. Olivia would leave the house cheerful, almost giddy, and return hours later with vague explanations about breakthrough moments and emotional processing. I'm an accountant. I notice patterns, and this pattern was setting off every alarm bell I had. We used a shared credit card to pay for the therapy sessions. It was easier that way, everything in one place. One evening in mid-March, while reviewing our monthly statement on the banking app, I noticed something odd. There were duplicate charges from Dr. Harris's practice on the same days as Olivia's appointments. But there were also charges from coffee shops and hotels near his office, always on days when she had sessions. The Westgate Hotel, the Living Room Cafe, places within walking distance of his building. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, feeling my stomach drop. The charges weren't large, $60 here, $90 there, but they formed a timeline, a story written in transactions. I didn't confront her, not yet, because if there's one thing my profession has taught me, it's that you don't make accusations without evidence. You gather data, you build a case, you make sure you're absolutely right before you act. The next morning, I contacted a private investigator. His name was Mike Reeves, a former LAPD detective who'd gone private after 20 years on the force. I met him at a diner in Chula Vista, away from anywhere Olivia or her friends might see us. "I need to know if my wife is having an affair," I told him, sliding a folder across the table. Inside were copies of the credit card statements, Olivia's schedule, and Dr. Harris's office information. Mike flipped through the papers, his expression unchanged. "How long has this been going on?" 3 months of therapy total, 2 months of individual sessions, but the pattern only became clear in the last few weeks. "And you want photographic evidence?" "I want the truth, whatever that looks like." He nodded. "Give me 2 weeks, I'll have everything you need. My rate is $1,500 for the surveillance package plus expenses." I went back to my routine. Woke up at 6:30 every morning, made coffee, went to work, came home, had dinner with Olivia. She talked about her students, about department politics at the university, about her therapy sessions and how much they were helping her find herself. I smiled and nodded and asked follow-up questions like a good husband should. Inside, I was counting down the days. Even though I didn't feel rage, the silence at night sometimes weighed heavier than any argument we'd ever had. Mike called me on a Thursday afternoon in early April. "We need to meet. I've got what you asked for." We met at the same diner. He handed me a manila envelope, thick with photographs and printed reports. I opened it slowly, preparing myself for what I was about to see. The first photo showed Olivia and Dr. Harris sitting at an outdoor cafe, her hand on his across the table. The second showed them entering the Westgate Hotel 3 blocks from his office. The third showed them leaving 2 hours later, her hair different, his tie loosened. There were timestamps on everything, dates, locations, durations. "They've been meeting twice a week for the past 6 weeks, Mike explained. "Always the same hotel, always booked under his name. They're not even trying to hide it that well. They use the therapy appointments as cover, then spend the rest of the afternoon together." I stared at the photos, feeling nothing. No rage, no heartbreak, just cold clinical detachment. This was a problem. Problems had solutions, and I was very good at finding solutions. "How much do I owe you?" I asked. $1,800 total. That includes surveillance, documentation, and a written report with all the evidence cross-referenced. I wrote him a check on the spot. "I may need you to testify if this goes to court. Just let me know." I drove home with the envelope on the passenger seat. I didn't open it again. I didn't need to. I already knew what I was going to do. Before taking any action, I consulted with an attorney. Not for the divorce, not yet, but to understand my legal position. He reviewed everything and gave me clear advice. Document everything. Report the professional misconduct through proper channels. Don't confront them directly. Let the system work. That night, Olivia told me she had another individual session scheduled for the following Tuesday. "Dr. Harris thinks we're making real progress," she said, smiling. "He says I'm finally learning to prioritize my own needs." "That's great," I replied. "I'm glad it's helping." The next morning, I started building my case. Not against Olivia, at least not directly. Against Dr. Colin Harris, licensed clinical psychologist, member of the California Board of Psychology. I pulled up the ethical guidelines for mental health professionals in California. Section 1, subsection 4. Sexual or romantic relationships with current clients constitute professional misconduct and grounds for license suspension or revocation. I printed it out. Then I compiled every receipt, every credit card charge, every appointment record. I cross-referenced them with Mike's surveillance photos and timestamps. The evidence was airtight. Dr. Harris had violated every ethical standard in his profession. He'd used his position of authority to seduce a vulnerable client. He'd billed for therapy sessions that never happened, or that turned into something else entirely. And he'd done it all while presenting himself as a trusted professional helping to save our marriage. I drafted a formal complaint to the California Board of Psychology. 12 pages, single-spaced, with 37 pieces of supporting documentation. I detailed every violation, cited every relevant statute, and included Mike's written report as an expert witness statement. I never mentioned Olivia by name. I referred to her only as Patient A, currently receiving treatment from Dr. Harris for marital issues. I submitted the complaint on a Monday morning in mid-April. By Wednesday, the board had opened an investigation. By Friday, Dr. Harris received notice that his license was under review and that he was prohibited from seeing patients until the investigation concluded. I know this because his receptionist called Olivia to cancel all upcoming appointments. I was standing in the kitchen when she took the call. "What do you mean his license is suspended?" Olivia said into the phone, her voice rising. "What happened?" No one told me anything." She hung up and immediately dialed Dr. Harris. I watched her face go pale as she listened to whatever he told her. When she ended the call, she just stood there staring at her phone. "What's wrong?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Collins, Dr. Harris is being investigated by the licensing board. Someone filed a complaint." "That's terrible. What kind of complaint?" "He didn't say. He just said he can't see patients right now, and that he'd let me know when things are resolved." If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. The investigation moved faster than I expected. The Board of Psychology doesn't mess around when it comes to sexual misconduct. They interviewed me as the spouse who'd been paying for the therapy. They interviewed Mike Reeves. They subpoenaed Dr. Harris's appointment records and financial statements. And somewhere in that process, they figured out who patient A was. I never told anyone. I didn't have to. By early June, 8 weeks after I filed the complaint, the local news ran a story. Prominent San Diego therapist under investigation for ethics violations. They didn't name Olivia, but they mentioned that the case involved an inappropriate relationship with a married client during couples therapy. In a city like San Diego, where everyone in certain circles knows everyone else, it didn't take long for people to connect the dots. I started noticing it at the grocery store. Former friends of ours would see me, then quickly look away. Conversations would stop when I walked into a room. I didn't mind. I wasn't the one who'd done anything wrong. Olivia, on the other hand, was falling apart. She'd always been proud of her position at the university. She taught ethics and education, of all things. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, especially not the university administration. When word got out that she'd been involved with a therapist who'd violated professional ethics during therapy meant to save her marriage, the department chair called her in for a meeting. I only know this because she told me, in a rare moment of honesty, probably driven by panic. "They're putting me on administrative leave," she said one evening in mid-June, sitting at the kitchen table with her head in her hands. "They said it's pending an internal review of conduct standards." "Daniel, I could lose my job." "Why would you lose your job over someone else's ethics violation?" I asked, even though I knew exactly why. "Because people are talking. Because students have complained. Because the board thinks I've damaged the integrity of the department." I wanted to feel sympathy. Part of me tried to find it somewhere inside. But mostly I just felt satisfied. Not happy, not vindictive, just satisfied. Like when you balance a complicated spreadsheet and all the numbers finally line up. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I don't know. Colin won't return my calls. His lawyer told him not to communicate with anyone involved in the case." Probably smart advice. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the moment she started to wonder. "Daniel, did I what? Did you file that complaint?" I met her eyes. "I reported professional misconduct to the appropriate licensing board." "Yes, you knew." "I'm an accountant, Olivia. I notice patterns. I follow evidence. And when I see someone violating the law and professional ethics, I report it. That's what responsible people do." She started to cry. Not the delicate, sympathetic kind of crying that makes you want to comfort someone. The ugly, desperate kind that comes from realizing you've destroyed your own life, and there's no one to blame but yourself. I stood up and walked out of the room. I had work to finish. The Board of Psychology completed its investigation by late July. They found Dr. Colin Harris guilty of gross professional misconduct, sexual misconduct with a client, fraudulent billing practices, and violation of client trust. His license was permanently revoked. He could never practice psychology in California again. The decision was published in the board's public records. Anyone could look it up. Journalists did. Blog posts were written. Professional circles in San Diego discussed it over lunch and drinks. Dr. Harris's name became a cautionary tale, the kind of story professors use in ethics classes to illustrate everything you should never do. And because the complaint mentioned couples therapy, because people talk and rumors spread, Olivia's name eventually surfaced. Not in official documents, but in whispered conversations and knowing looks. She became the woman who'd had an affair with her therapist, who'd destroyed a marriage while pretending to fix it, who'd betrayed her husband in the most calculated way possible. The university extended her administrative leave indefinitely. Translation: they didn't want to fire her outright and risk a lawsuit, but they made it clear she had no future there. She started applying for positions at other schools. None of them called back. I filed for divorce in September, 5 months after submitting the complaint to the board. By then, the legal landscape was entirely in my favor. Olivia had no credibility, no moral high ground, no sympathetic narrative. My lawyer presented the evidence of infidelity, the professional misconduct findings, and the pattern of deception. The judge granted me everything I asked for: the house, the retirement accounts, no alimony. Olivia moved into a small apartment in Normal Heights by November. Last I heard, she was teaching part-time at a community college in El Cajon, making a fraction of what she used to earn. Dr. Harris left San Diego entirely. Rumor has it he's working in pharmaceutical sales somewhere in Arizona, about as far from therapy as you can get without leaving the field entirely. People ask me sometimes how I did it, how I stayed so calm, so controlled, while my marriage was disintegrating and my wife was sleeping with our therapist. The answer is simple. I focused on what I could control. I couldn't control Olivia's choices. I couldn't control Dr. Harris's ethics, but I could control my response. I could gather evidence. I could use the systems in place, the laws and regulations designed to prevent exactly this kind of abuse, and I could apply them precisely and effectively. That's not revenge. That's justice. A lot of people would have confronted them, screamed, made scenes, posted angry rants on social media. But what would that have accomplished? Nothing. It would have made me look unstable, emotional, unreliable. It would have given them ammunition to paint me as the problem, the controlling husband, the reason the marriage failed. Instead, I let the system do its work. I provided the evidence and stepped back. The Board of Psychology did exactly what it's supposed to do when a therapist violates professional ethics. The university did exactly what it's supposed to do when a faculty member damages its reputation. The court did exactly what it's supposed to do when one spouse commits infidelity. I didn't have to destroy them. They destroyed themselves. I just made sure there was a record of it. My life now is quieter than it used to be. I still work as an accountant, still live in the same house in San Diego, still wake up at 6:30 and make coffee. But the house feels different now. Lighter somehow. Less cluttered with lies and pretense. Sometimes when I wake up early on a weekend, I still glance at the other side of the bed out of habit. The silence doesn't feel empty anymore, though. It feels earned. I've dated a few people since the divorce finalized earlier this year. Nothing serious yet, but I'm not in a hurry. I learned a lot from what happened with Olivia. I learned that trust has to be earned, that actions matter more than words, that people will show you who they are if you pay attention to the details. I also learned that experience is valuable. At 42, I've seen enough to know when something doesn't add up. I've developed instincts, sharpened by years of analyzing data and spotting inconsistencies. Those instincts saved me from wasting years in a marriage that was already over. They helped me protect myself, legally and financially, before things got worse. Sometimes I wonder if Olivia ever thinks about what she lost. We had a good life, stable income, nice home, genuine partnership for most of those 11 years. She threw it away for what? Exciting afternoons with a therapist who was willing to risk his entire career for an affair? Whatever she thought she was getting, it wasn't worth it. And Dr. Harris? He lost everything. His reputation, his license, his livelihood, his marriage. Yes, he was married too. His wife divorced him 6 months after the board's decision. Apparently, she'd had suspicions for years, but the official finding gave her the proof she needed. He destroyed 2 marriages, all because he couldn't keep professional boundaries. The hardest part of this whole experience wasn't the betrayal itself. It was watching people I'd known for years struggle with how to treat me. Some friends disappeared entirely, too uncomfortable to deal with the messiness of divorce and infidelity. Others stayed close, checked in regularly, made sure I was doing okay. Those are the ones who mattered. Those are the ones still in my life. There's a certain satisfaction in knowing I handled this the right way. I didn't become bitter or vengeful. I didn't lash out or make threats. I simply used the tools available to me, the legitimate channels designed to address professional misconduct and marital betrayal. And because I did it right, Because I followed proper procedures and documented everything, the outcome was clean, final, indisputable. Without Mike Reeves and his meticulous work, the truth might have taken much longer to emerge. Sometimes I think about that, how different things could have been if I'd ignored my instincts or dismissed the patterns I was seeing. But I didn't, and that made all the difference. I keep Mike's business card in my desk drawer, not because I plan to hire him again, but as a reminder that truth matters, that evidence matters, that patience and precision will always beat emotional reactions. A few months ago, I ran into one of Olivia's former colleagues at a coffee shop downtown. She recognized me and hesitated, clearly unsure whether to say hello. I nodded politely. She came over. "Daniel, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about everything that happened. The whole department was shocked when we found out." "Thank you. It was difficult, but I'm doing well now. For what it's worth, I always thought you were a good guy." What she did, what they both did, it was inexcusable. I appreciated that, not because I needed validation, but because it confirmed what I already knew. People recognize the difference between someone who acts with integrity and someone who doesn't. I've thought about writing this all down before, maybe sharing the story to help other people who find themselves in similar situations. Because the truth is, betrayal happens. Affairs happen. Professionals violate ethics. And when they do, you have options. You can react emotionally and make things worse, or you can respond strategically and protect yourself. I chose the latter, and I'd make the same choice again. Looking back, I don't regret the years I spent with Olivia. We had good times, built a life together, shared experiences that shaped who I am. But I also don't regret how I ended it. When I discovered the truth, I acted decisively and appropriately. I used my skills, my profession's training in attention to detail and documentation, to build an airtight case, and I let the consequences unfold naturally. That's the thing about truth. When you present it clearly, when you back it up with evidence and follow proper procedures, it becomes undeniable. People can't argue with it. They can't spin it or reframe it or make excuses for it. It just is. And sometimes, that's the most powerful weapon you have. I'm 42 years old. I'm a certified public accountant. I'm divorced. And I'm at peace with how I got here. Because I know I did the right thing, the legal thing, the ethical thing. I didn't seek revenge. I sought justice. And I found it. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so, and turn on notifications to get new stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.